Hello, and welcome to Starbound. My name is I Am Duck, and I'll be your narrator. If you enjoy human-created HFY stories and want to support us, we're on Patreon now. You'll also get access to exclusive stories you won't hear anywhere else. Link is in the description. Now let's get into it. The report on his desk was 91 pages long. Belshazzar had written longer reports himself, on less. He had never written a report that began with 50 ships and ended with one. He had never written a report where direct testimony from a surviving crew contained the line, "We saw what they left behind. Tell them to run." He set the deposition aside and looked at the cover sheet again. He was not aware, as he always was not aware at the start of a case, that his elongated ring and little fingers were already moving against the edge of the desk. It was what his hands did when his mind was working. He had stopped noticing it a long time ago. Belshazzar was medium height for a Velketh, lean in the way that analysts went lean. Not from hardship, but from the kind of sustained stillness that burnt nothing and built nothing. Pale ash-grey skin, faintly granular at the knuckles and jaw. Four-fingered hands, the ring and little fingers longer than a human's by half again. Large, pale grey eyes with a horizontal pupil that gave him a wide, flat field of vision and very little depth at close range. He had learnt over the years to hold documents at arm's length. The file had arrived that morning, carried by Dravan, without ceremony. UNNCIS origin. The humans had sent it back with the surviving ship, transcript and recording both. Dravan's conduct was correct. He was a junior analyst and Belshazzar was senior, and the correct behavior between them was economy. The file placed on the desk, a single nod, the door closed on the way out. No questions. Belshazzar had noticed, as he always noticed, that Dravan had stood very still while he set the file down. Less experienced analysts had not yet developed the indexing habit, the constant small movement and the elongated ring and little fingers against whatever surface was nearest, reading data that wasn't there, sorting nothing. Dravan's hands had been at his sides. Belshazzar's had been moving against the edge of the desk before Dravan had even reached the door. He had not noticed he was doing it until Dravan was gone. He had noted the classification stamp before he noted anything else. Unrestricted. He had turned that over for a moment, the way he turned everything over once, fully, and then filed. Unrestricted meant whoever had processed the file at intake had looked over the cover sheet, read survey operations, border assessments, and moved it through the system without reading further. It was a reasonable decision given the cover sheet. It was the wrong decision given the contents. Someone had not known what they were holding. In the Directorate's filing system, unrestricted was not a clearance. It was an absence of attention. There was a difference. Belshazzar noted it. That was the first anomaly. He noted it the way he noted everything, without comment. The archive chamber was quiet around him. It was always quiet. The Velketh built their analytical facilities for silence the way other species built their weapons facilities for noise, with intention, with investment, with the understanding that what happened inside depended on the conditions being exactly right. High ceilings, walls thick enough to kill any sound that tried to come through them, no corridors that carried through traffic. One analyst, one case, one table. The room did not ask anything of the person inside it except that they work. The stone was old, the Velketh built for permanence. The chamber had been here before Belshazzar's career and would be here after it. That was also intentional. The work required continuity. The room provided it. He opened the file. The first page was an asset summary. Standard format. The same format used for every survey and assessment operation filed through the Directorate in the last 4 decades. Mission designation, authorizing authority, departure date, projected return window, asset count. He read down the column, assets deployed, 50. Assets returned. 1. He read that line thrice, not because he disbelieved it. The file was official record, stamped and verified, and official record did not miscount assets. He read it twice because the Velketh analytical method required a moment of full acknowledgement before proceeding. The method was not sentiment, it was discipline. A conclusion absorbed too quickly was a conclusion that could be argued around later, and Valshara did not allow himself to argue around conclusions. He required himself to hold them. The third time was not part of the method. He noticed his secondary membrane had closed across his left eye. He blinked it back. He had not noticed it closing. 50 ships. 1 returned. He held it. Then he turned to the back of the file and read the deposition transcript first. That was how he worked. It was not standard practice. The standard practice was chronological, evidence before conclusion. The reconstruction built from the ground up. Valshara had read enough reconstructions built that way to know what they produced. Analysts who understood the evidence and were surprised by the conclusion. He had been surprised by a conclusion once, early in his career, and had not enjoyed the experience. He read the conclusion first because the conclusion told him what he was building toward. The evidence told him how it had been built. Knowing the destination changed what he noticed on the way there, and what he noticed on the way there was the work. He had done it long enough that it was not a method anymore. It was simply the shape his mind took when it was working. Every complement case was a closed argument. Every incomplete case was an open wound. He had never opened a case he could not close. He did not intend to start now. The transcript was 3 pages, transcribed from recorded testimony, reformatted from human standard to directorate standard, marked with the subject's name and designation at the top of the first page. Commander M. Robert Smith. UNDF scout vessel UNSS Aperture. There was a service photograph clipped to the inside cover. Standard format, the subject looking at the camera with the expression of someone who had been asked to look at a camera and had obliged, but whose attention was somewhere else entirely. There was wear in his face, the kind that came from use, not damage. The photograph had been taken before any of this. Whatever was in that face in the deposition, it was not in the photograph. He noted the difference and turned to the first page. The interviewer's questions were short, terse. Valshara read them as he listened to them. Transcript open, recording running, and formed a picture of whoever had been sitting across from Smith. Someone who understood that a deposition needed to be completed, who did not fully understand what they were sitting across from, and who had treated the interview as a procedural requirement rather than an opportunity. The questions were the questions of someone moving through a checklist. They were not the questions of someone who had understood yet what the checklist was attached to. Smith answered everything. His register was flat throughout the deposition. His language was plain, short sentences, no subordinate clauses that were not necessary, no reaching for weight or drama. He described events chronologically. He used technical terminology correctly and did not use it to obscure. When a question was unclear, he said so and asked for clarification. When a question was clear, he answered it and stopped. He did not editorialize once. He had decided that the correct response was to make sure the information did not stop with him. The deposition was how he did that. Valshara read it to the end. The final exchange was brief. The interviewer asked why Smith had marked the hull. Smith's answer took a few moments, because that was the accurate thing to do. Because if they are going to send anyone else out there, they should know before they go. The word is run. It covers the situation. I use the word that covers the situation. Valshara read that twice. He closed the deposition. He turned to page 1 and began from the beginning. The mission had been authorized correctly. Valshara established this in the first 20 pages and it mattered. The Velketh analytical method required competence to be confirmed before cause could be assigned. If the mission had been careless, the explanation was carelessness, and carelessness was a closed argument, simple, ugly, and done. He needed to know it had not been careless before he could look for something else. It had not been careless. The border region had been assessed at low risk. No known installations, no recorded activity. The brief had been written on the available intelligence, and the available intelligence had not included the array, because the array had never done anything worth recording. The mission brief was thorough. 50 ships in spread formation, standard configuration for passive survey work, wide enough to cover the target sector, close enough to maintain signal coherence across the full group. Scan protocol, passive only, no active emissions, no targeting solutions, nothing that could be read as a provocation. Rules of engagement, no approach within the established border threshold, no active comms with any human installation, no escalation under any circumstances. The authorizing authority had initialed every clause. Not a stamp, not a delegated sign-off, initialed. Someone senior had read it line by line and put their mark on each one. The mission commander was a Velketh officer. Severin, leading from the forward ship with 23 years of survey operations behind him, he had filed his own supplementary notes alongside the standard brief. Weather analogues for the border region, contingency routing for 3 separate deviation scenarios. Full maintenance schedules for every ship in the formation. The maintenance schedules alone ran to 11 pages. Severin had been thorough. Valshara knew this because he had trained him. Severin had been the best analyst in his intake. That was why Valshara had recommended him for field command. He noted it once and did not return to it. He had work to do. The formation had entered the survey corridor on schedule. Telemetry confirmed departure, confirmed transit, confirmed border approach. Every waypoint matched the brief. Every interval matched the projected timeline. The mission had been doing exactly what it was supposed to do, in exactly the way it was supposed to do it. Which meant that whatever had gone wrong had not gone wrong here. It had gone wrong later, and it had gone wrong with something the brief had not accounted for, which meant the brief had not known it existed, which meant Valshara was now looking for something that no one had thought to look for. He worked through the documentation methodically. The maintenance schedule appendix came near the end of the file, after the rules of engagement and before the contingency routing notes. He read through it the way he read through everything, steadily, without skipping, his fingers moving in their quiet indexing motion against the edge of the table. One of the 50 ships had its comms and sensor arrays in a scheduled maintenance cycle during the survey window. Standard maintenance cycle, filed in advance, approved by Severin with a notation confirming the timing, had been reviewed against the operational window and cleared. He noted it, as he noted everything else in the appendix, once, without pause, and moved to the next entry. He loaded the telemetry package and began from the beginning of the mission clock. The telemetry reconstruction was the largest part of his working day. The data came in packets, each ship's sensor log compressed and time-stamped, feeding into the reconstruction array on his table. He ran it at half speed. He wanted to see what the ships had seen. For the first 11 minutes there was nothing unusual. The formation crossed into the border zone on the projected heading. Massive scans returned exactly what the brief had projected. Low-density debris field. Residual thermal signatures consistent with old construction activity. Standard background radiation. The border markers human standard clean. Unambiguous. Maintained to a tolerance that suggested automated upkeep. Passed behind the formation as the survey began. Valshara watched the data scroll and noted, as he always noted, that uneventful openings were not the same as safe ones. They were simply uneventful. The distinction mattered. Then the array appeared on the scans. The formation's networked sensor systems flagged it as a structure of interest. Unknown. Large. clearly artificial, power signature minimal. The flag was routine. In a survey operation, structures of interest were logged, noted, and passed to the analysis team for follow-up. The flag carried no urgency marker. Nothing in the assessment had triggered escalation. The structure was old. The thermal profile was consistent with something that had been sitting in low-power standby for a very long time. Drawing just enough to maintain its systems against the cold, the formation continued on its heading. The flag sat in the log alongside 11 other structures of interest, noted in the first 11 minutes of the survey. One of the 11 was a human vessel, unknown configuration to the formation's records, holding position at the edge of the survey corridor, well clear of the border threshold, not crossing, not transmitting, just actively scanning the formation. The formation's networked sensor systems flagged it, logged it, and moved on. There were 12 structures of interest. The array was one of them. It was not ranked first. It was not ranked last. It sat where the formation's networked sensor systems had placed it, in the order they had encountered it. Valshara paused the reconstruction. He noted the array's power signature on his data slate. Minimal draw, maintenance level, consistent with standby. He noted also that the formation's network sensor systems had categorized the structure as dormant. He sat with that for a moment. Then he wrote 2 words on the slate beside the power reading. Dormant, inactive. He looked at them. They were not the same word. Dormant meant a system in a reduced state, conserving resources, capable of returning to full function. Inactive meant a system that was off. The thermal profile was consistent with dormant. It was not consistent with inactive. And the formation's networked sensor systems had not distinguished between them, and so the formation had continued on its heading toward a structure that was not off. He noted that the formation's networked sensor systems had not made this distinction. No one had. The distinction was not in the flag format. It was not in the protocol. It was the kind of observation that required a mind to make it, and the systems that had been making the observations did not have one. He resumed the reconstruction. 13 minutes and 40 seconds into the survey, the array activated. The activation signature was immediate and unambiguous. Power spiked from maintenance level to what the telemetry estimated as fully operational in under 2 seconds. Not a gradual climb, not a stage spin-up, but a single step change that the telemetry recorded as a vertical line where a gentle slope should have been. Valshara had seen signatures like it before in Dominion infrastructure, proximity-triggered monitoring systems, border approach sensors, the class of automated installation that did not wait to be switched on because waiting was not part of its design. It detected, it classified, it broadcast. The detection had already happened. The classification was underway. He pulled the comms intercept data. The array was broadcasting on all standard frequencies, full power, continuous signal. The content was in the file as a translation appendix. Valshara went to the appendix and read it. The array was broadcasting a threat classification. The taxonomy was the Dominion's own, the galactic standard. It had applied the taxonomy to the Velketh Scout formation. The classification was Category 1, Extinction, Level, Threat. Hostile intent confirmed. He understood the mechanism. The array was old. The thermal profile had told him that. It was broadcasting in Galactic Standard Taxonomy. The taxonomy was current. The data behind it was not. A passive survey formation had crossed a threshold and the array had classified it correctly, according to whatever it had on file, when that file was last updated. Nothing had ever crossed the threshold to trigger it, so there had been no reason to update the file. There had been nothing out there. The array was not wrong. It was operating on old data. When something had finally crossed the threshold, it had done exactly what it was built to do. He went back to the telemetry and advanced to the 49-second mark. He ran it at quarter speed the first time. He wanted to see the intervals clearly, wanted to watch each event resolve before the next one began. He ran it at eighth speed the second time, because quarter speed had not been slow enough to hold all of it at once. The third time he did not adjust the playback at all. He let it run at full speed. 3 minutes and 51 seconds, because he had decided he should know what it had felt like in real time. He owed the reconstruction that much. The broadcast reached all 50 ships simultaneously. Full power, all frequencies, continuous. The content was unambiguous. Category 1 extinction level threat in immediate proximity. The signal was authenticated. Human infrastructure broadcasting on galactic standard frequencies in galactic standard taxonomy. There was nothing in the signal that the ship systems could question, because the ship systems had not been built to question a signal like this. They had been built to respond to it. The automated threat response protocol did not wait for a command decision. It was not designed to. Category 1 existed for exactly this scenario, a threat of sufficient magnitude that the time required for command assessment would itself be fatal. In the interval between a commander recognizing a Category 1 event and issuing a response order, the event would already have concluded. The protocol was hardwired. Receipt of a Category 1 broadcast was sufficient. It did not require confirmation from a second source. It only needed the networked ship's AIs to confer and concur. It did not require a minimum signal duration. The protocol sequence was fixed. Drive kill first, to prevent capture of the vessel and its navigation data. Atmosphere venting of non-essential compartments. To kill secondary power draws and deny the threat a recoverable hull. Active destruction of sensor and comms arrays. To deny intelligence value. Emergency dispersal. To prevent simultaneous targeting of the full formation. The first ship executed at the 51-second mark. Valshara watched the drive signature drop, a flat line on the telemetry where power reading had been. Then the venting pulse, brief and sharp, a spike and then nothing. Then comms blackout. In the same window, the human vessel's drive signature changed. It had been holding position. Now it was moving, fast. Valshara noted the heading. Smith had not understood what the first execution meant. He probably saw a ship in distress and began moving, possibly to offer aid. The second ship at 53 seconds, the third at 55. He watched the formation dissolve. Ship 27 had been off the network since its maintenance cycle began. The networked AIs had reached consensus across 49 ships. Each ship in sequence, the gaps between them calculated to maximize dispersal. The networked AIs had reached consensus and executed the pre-planned dispersal cascade loaded prior to mission launch. Not a chain, a plan. Adjacent vessels did not trigger each other. They triggered on schedule. Each at its assigned point in the sequence, each gap a deliberate interval. By the 90-second mark, 48 ships had executed. The ships were not confirming threat signal to each other. They already knew. The triggers were faster than any command decision could ever be. Faster than any command in any of those ships could have reached their own comms to say stop. Faster than the word could have traveled from one end of the formation to the other, even if every channel had been open and every officer had already known what to say. They had not known what to say. There was nothing in their training, nothing in the protocol documentation, nothing in the survey brief that had told them what to say when a Category 1 broadcast arrived from a source they had passed 11 minutes earlier without incident. Sitting dormant in the dark, ship by ship, the telemetry log was a column of flat lines, each one the moment a drive had died. Each one a ship that would not move again. The 49th at 3 minutes and 47 seconds. 50 ships. 49 execution signatures in the sequence. One slot that was never filled. Valshara did the arithmetic. Ship 27 sat in the formation with its comms and sensor arrays in scheduled maintenance blackout. It received nothing. Its threat response systems received no broadcast, confirmed no alert state, executed no protocol. It could not. The channel was closed, and the array's signal, for all its power, could not reach a receiver that was not powered on. The ship drifted. Around it, 49 ships were dying by their own hand, and Ship 27 did not know because Ship 27 had not heard the thing that had told them to. Valshara watched Ship 27 drift in the wreckage. It moved the way a ship moved, and no one was telling it not to. Ship 27's systems came back online. The array was still broadcasting. The crew received the classification the moment their systems were powered up again. Galactic Standard Full Taxonomy. Category 1. Extinction. Level. Threat. The crew read the classification themselves when Ship 27's maintenance cycle ended and its systems came back online. It was alone. 49 ships gone. No network. The protocol required consensus. Ship 27's AI had no one to confer with and nothing to concur on. The protocol had nothing to work with. Valshara noted that the same mechanism that had killed 49 ships had declined to kill the 50th. For exactly the same reason it had not worked the first time. Ship 27's sensors showed the UNSS Aperture already alongside. Smith had been moving toward the formation since the first execution. 49 ships executing in sequence, each one a flat line on whatever instruments the Aperture was running, and he had kept coming. Valshara noted the heading again. It had not wavered. He had watched 49 ships die by their own hand, and he had come anyway. There must have been a UNNCIS agent aboard, allowing them to dispose Smith in the field. Smith marked the hull when the Aperture pulled up alongside. One word. The accurate word for the accurate situation. Smith transmitted the file to Ship 27, and then he cleared away. Valshara watched Ship 27's drive signature change, not the flat line of a kill. A course change, a ship turning itself around and running. The crew had understood what the classification meant. No human had fired a weapon. No human had given an order that caused this. The humans aboard the Aperture had known the scouts were there. They had watched. They had come alongside, but no human hand had triggered what happened in that corridor. The array had not known the scouts were there. It did not know anything. It did not have a concept of knowing. It had detected a mass crossing a perimeter threshold, and it had broadcast a classification, and it was still broadcasting now into the wreckage because no one had told it to stop, and it had not been built to stop on its own. Severin had not made an error. The formation had not made an error. The ship's automated systems had not made an error. Every component in this event had operated exactly as designed. Valshara sat very still. His secondary membranes had closed across both eyes. He did not try to blink them back. He sat in the dark behind them and held the thought that had no framework to sit on. 49 ships, 3 minutes and 51 seconds, and nothing that had happened had been wrong. The array had done its job. The ships had done their job. The protocols had done their job. The maintenance schedule had done its job. Every system had functioned correctly. The outcome was a field of wreckage and a single surviving crew that had lived because their comms and sensors had been offline. The array had been running because no one had needed it to stop. There had been nothing out there. And then there had been. Valshara rewatched and reread the deposition a third time. The first time he had reviewed it, he had been looking for conclusion. What had happened, rendered in plain language by the only witness. The third time he reviewed it for texture. He read the interviewer's questions and noted what the interviewer had not understood. He read Smith's answers and noted what Smith had not felt the need to explain. The interviewer had asked early in the deposition whether the formation had provoked the response, whether the scouts had done something, crossed a threshold, activated a system, transmitted a signal that could be characterized as an initiating action. Smith's answer had been one sentence. No. They crossed the border and proceeded on a heading we were able to project after tracking their approach, at least until they annihilated themselves. The interview had moved on. Valshara did not move on. He sat with that answer for a moment because what Smith had not said was as important as what he had. Smith had not said the scouts were innocent. He had not said they had done nothing wrong. He had said they had followed their course, which was a different statement. And Smith had known it was a different statement. And the interviewer had not noticed the difference. The scouts had done nothing wrong. They had also, by existing in that space, triggered something that had killed 49 of them. Both of those things were true simultaneously, and Smith had understood that, and he had not wasted a word of his deposition trying to argue his way out of it. The facts were the facts. He had reported them. The interviewer asked whether human forces had been responsible for the loss of 49 ships. Smith's answer? No. We knew they were there, but they didn't appear hostile. We detected no active weapons systems. The array doesn't know either. It's just running. That's what it does. The interviewer had asked what the crew had observed before coming alongside the alien ship. There was a pause marked in the transcript, 2 seconds, and then Smith had answered. We saw what they left behind. Tell them to run. Valshara read that answer and then read it again. The first time he had encountered it, at the back of the file before he had read anything else, it had been a warning. Reading it now with the telemetry behind him and the cascade still running in his memory at 3 speeds, it was something else. It was not a warning. It was a report and a piece of advice simultaneously. Smith had observed the array, the wreckage, and the classification still broadcasting into empty space, and he had reported what the observation meant in the plainest language available. The word on the hull was the same, not a warning. The accurate word for the accurate situation, placed where it would do the most good. He moved to the end of the deposition. The interviewer had asked whether the array could be shut down. The transcript noted a pause of 6 seconds before Smith answered, Probably. If someone went out there to shut it down, we haven't done that because we haven't needed to. There wasn't anything out there. A pause. 3 seconds, noted in the transcript. There wasn't anything out there until there was. Valshara read that twice. He thought about the format migration that had carried old threat assessments forward into the galactic standard taxonomy without reviewing them, because there had been no reason to review them, because nothing had ever triggered the array, because there had been nothing out there. He thought about the way a species that had survived long enough accumulated infrastructure, the way old buildings accumulated load-bearing walls. You stopped knowing which walls you could remove because you had stopped checking a long time ago, and nothing had fallen down. So you had assumed nothing would. The humans had not stopped checking because they were careless. They had stopped checking because nothing had ever given them a reason to start again. The humans had not been careless. They had been exactly as careful as the situation had required them to be, which was not careful at all, because the situation had required anything of them. The array had worked. The checklist had aged. The taxonomy had been updated around data that had mined. Now 49 ships and their crews were gone. He thought about the word on the hull. Run. He closed the file. The executive summary took him 40 minutes. He wrote it the way he wrote everything, plainly, in order, without embellishment. What had happened, why it had happened, what the mechanism had been. He did not editorialize. He did not reach for language that would make the directorate feel better about what the file contained, because Shara did not write dishonest reports. He had thought about Severin twice during the reconstruction, and had stopped in the operations 11 pages of maintenance schedules, initialed by the authorizing authority, approved by Severin, filed, stamped, and carried into a border region where something old and mindless had been waiting in the dark with the Dominion's name already on file. He stopped thinking about Severin. He had a recommendation to write. The formal recommendation was 3 sentences. The loss of the survey formation was caused by interaction between automated human legacy infrastructure and Dominion standard threat response protocols. No hostile action was taken by any human party. My recommendation: do not send anything or anyone into that space until we have made diplomatic contact and asked, very politely, whether they would be willing to update the databases on the array.